I just relapsed. Now's the perfect time to start working again. I heard if your mental health is poor, it helps to rapidly increase your exposure to risky situations. My depression is unlocking new feats. I haven't eaten for 3 days. I didn't know it could do that. That's new.
They fly now? They fly now!
What have I been listening to? The Tunic soundtrack? That Doja Cat album about hating poor people? I released some very sad music on Spotify. You should listen to it or don't. I know you're not here for that. I was leaving a Home Depot and I said, "Happy Holidays" to the cashier and she was like, "Merry Christmas." Excuse me, he is risen indeed. Folgers coffee has been cited at Walmart and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. They're a product owned by the J.M. Smucker Company, whose stock at time of writing is doing pretty good. A healthy part of a balanced portfolio, if you ask me. And just like that, it's down again. That's how it goes, baby. I didn't like the GameStop movie. I invested the entirety of my dead wife's dowry into Smuckers, so we gotta get this back up. Let's talk marketing. Let's talk Folgers commercials. Exhibit A, this heartwarming 1-minute ad spot titled "Peter Comes Home for Christmas," released in 1985. Emerging from a taxi on Christmas morning, presents in hand, hark! It's Peter! Big Brother has evidently been away from home for quite some time, but is back for the holidays, and his tiny, adorable toddler sister is overjoyed to see him early in the morning.
Merry Christmas.
Early in the morning when nary a Christmas mouse is awake. Shh!
Everyone's asleep.
Shh! Shut up! Before Mom and Dad are awake, Peter and baby sis enjoy some vague quality time and brew a batch of bonding Folgers coffee, available in stores today. Look at him blissfully pour a cup of Joe dangerously close to his face. Mother and father finally arise from their eternal slumber with the respective ah and The two genders.
The sacred identity of children.
They descend their spiral staircase to their descendant with a resplendent Peter. Cue Folgers jingle. Buy Folgers coffee today. Timeless advertisement. No notes. But unfortunately, we live in an era of remakes and remasters and re-releases, so we could just not let this timeless classic do without an update. We here at J.M. Smuckers simply need to bring the story of Peter Comes Home for Christmas 1985 to a new generation of coffee drinkers that lack standards. Enter the subject of our study today. Brother and Sister, Home for Christmas, 2009.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
First of all, look at the pace. Just observe and viscerally experience the mutation of our attention span. This is 25 years difference of how advertisers expect us to ingest content.
Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas.
Both commercials start identically in terms of content. Brother exits taxi, sister looks out the window, door opens. But just watch the difference in the speed of the cuts. In 1985, the first shot is a little more than 2 seconds long. In 2009, it's less than 1 second.
I'm not sad!
We don't even get 1 second to orient ourselves before we just scream into action. Look how Peter's sister blasts from the window to the door. In 1985, the little sister awakes to the sound of Brother's taxi departing, but in 2009, the taxi is already leaving in the first sub-second shot. In 1985, the young man says thank you and Merry Christmas to his cab driver.
Thanks a lot. Merry Christmas.
In 2009, we pay no heed to the help.
See you, chump.
And we get no sweet, sincere Peter and immediate hug. This is 2009. We have to instill every interaction with some level of irony.
I must have the wrong house.
This joke doesn't really land as charming or funny because it's like it's trying to subvert an expectation we haven't had the time to develop. We just got here like maybe 2 seconds ago. We don't know who these guys are. We don't know enough about them to be surprised because the guy pretends he doesn't know the girl. There have been 5 cuts in 4 seconds. There was 0 space to breathe. One of our characters has spent their entire 6 introductory frames yeeting themselves off camera, and the other one has spent their back to us the whole time. The first shot we see of Peter's face is when he starts to say something sarcastic, and then we cut away before he delivers the punchline.
I must have the wrong house.
So line number 1 of Brother Sister Home for Christmas 2009 fails the charisma check, fails the performance check, barely registers as sarcasm, let alone sibling banter. Because, by the way, this character is his sister. I know that because she says it.
Sister?
like a Pokemon. All of the events transpiring register as normal if you are slack-jawed, blurry-eyed, blank staring at your TV screen, lulled into passivity by the familiar rhythms of mass media, but the breakneck pace and ironic dialogue has actually, on paper, made the story borderline incomprehensible so far. Think of it on paper so far. Man rings the doorbell, woman opens door eagerly. Man, I must have the wrong house. Woman, sister! It's like it's written by ChatGPT. So what the hell is practically happening here? Well, the first interpretation that springs to mind is about less than 1 inch deep. It's that the brother is play pretending not to know his sister. It's a bit. It's like, you mean something to me, but I'm gonna act like you mean nothing to me to the point I don't even recognize you. It's funny. But what's a little uncomfortable here is it feels like maybe the idea is supposed to be that the sister looks different from last time he saw her, and he's commenting on that fact?
I must have the wrong house.
Annie? My goodness, you've grown.
It's like an uncle being like, damn, you grew so much, except we have nothing to compare her body's development to.
Right to jail, right away.
We don't know how long Peter's been away, and also without comparing this commercial to the commercial that it's a remake of, we also don't actually know yet that these people aren't related. They look the same age. It's not clear that they're siblings yet, so they very well could be a romantic interest. All of this contributes to making it feel like when she verbally identifies herself as sister, she's just announcing her name in the script so the audience knows that they're siblings, not lovers.
Oh, I missed you so much.
Peter's parents are once again not yet awake, but it feels like weirder this time than it did in 1985. This is a little unfair of me, but in 1985, it feels like 6 or 7 a.m., and in 2009, it feels like 10 or 11 a.m. It's just a subtle lighting thing.
Merry Christmas.
You know what I mean?
It's not the most important point in the universe. It just adds this extra layer of information that the parents are sleeping in later than their 20-something-year-old daughter, and like, good for them. I just think in my personal anecdotal experience that 20-year-olds sleep in later than their parents. So it's not important, it just buffers me a little bit. A toddler waking up early on Christmas morning out of sheer excitement explains itself, but a 20-something-year-old being wide-eyed, crouched by the window seems incongruous with the parents still being asleep. I don't know, do your parents sleep in? My mom is like 60 or something, and she wakes up at 7 a.m. every day. If I was awake at 20 years old at like 6 in the morning, she would be also awake and downstairs while I was making coffee, talking to me a lot. If you're wondering why I mentioned my mother and not my father while this commercial has a mother and a father in it, it's because I didn't know my father. He abandoned me, and also he died, so he's dead. After brother and sister hug and I missed you so much, the next line implicitly tries to explain why the parents are asleep, but it's too indirect to hit.
They waited up all night for you, you know.
It's a long way from West Africa.
Right. What?
Just a few degrees too indirect.
It didn't go in.
Like, just look at these two statements. These two statements do not feel causally related. The script is insane. I must have the wrong house. Sister, they waited up all night for you, you know? It's a long way from West Africa. What this seems to mean, after I take some seconds to think about it, is that Peter's flight from West Africa was delayed. So the parents were ready to receive him at a regular time, but then the flight was delayed unpredictably, and they waited up far past the time they planned to meet him at, and they ended up waiting for him all night, but the circumstances made it such that they eventually had to go to bed, and he arrived after they went to bed. Maybe the sister and the parents were high-fiving on the rotation around the sleep schedule. This is never made explicit in the commercial itself. This is work that you have to do listening to the commercial. And I want to talk about this because I think this is maybe a useful way for you to think about narrative. The internal logic of this commercial technically holds together, but that might not be the issue at stake when we're talking about a 45-second commercial. It's a 45-second coffee commercial, not an HBO show. We don't have time for implicit environmental storytelling. We have a few seconds to spare on this. It's not enough to logistically make sense upon further analysis. It has to actually make sense in the moment. I call this kind of thing wind drag. It's not a deal breaker. It's technically defensible, but it just requires a little more of the audience, and doesn't require more of the audience in the place that you want more required of the audience. Like, no one gains anything from the audience taking 2 extra seconds to understand what you're talking about in this particular instance. If you just take the effort to remove the wind drag, you increase the likelihood that the audience has a full-blown artistic, immersive, cohesive flow state experience with your Folgers Christmas coffee commercial. I think that's what quality is, when you're having a romantic experience that holds up to classical scrutiny. It's like, they're the same thing. Beauty is removing the necessity of definition. Can you believe that Lex Friedman got Jeff Bezos on his podcast?
The following is a conversation with Jeff Bezos.
Am I the only one that feels like the bodily transformations of the ultra-rich are terrifying? Jeff Bezos calls what I call wind drag paper cuts.
There are all these little tiny customer experience deficiencies, and we call those paper cuts. We make long lists of them, and then we have dedicated teams that go fix paper cuts.
I feel very conflicted about how billionaires talk about things that I also care about, like optimization. I guess my question would be like, optimization for what?
It's for your own good.
Who decides that? I'm a left-leaning individual, so I'm very suspicious of profit incentives. Makes me feel weird when profit people use my words. Anyways, much love to Bezos's morphed physique. Back to Folgers. The next line is iconic.
Real coffee.
Okay, two things. First, match cut on the sniff.
Real coffee.
Are we sure about that? Inspired editing choice. I don't want to diminish your contribution, but I don't think I like that. Was this idea hatched in the editing bay or in the writing phase? Secondly, did he just say, real coffee?
Real coffee.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This man just arrived from West Africa. Peter, that's where they make the real coffee. And Folgers? And Folgers is giving you your fucking Ratatouille moment right now? The parents proceed to wake up, as the scriptures foretell, except this time, we have no gendered and to tell us their sexes.
He's here.
It's a different time. Gender is more complicated now. Then halfway through this 45-second commercial, the drama begins.
Brought you something from far away.
Really?
Really?
Oh.
Chekhov's Christmas present from West Africa.
What's in the fucking box?
Hey, you think about it, this is the only actual tension that has shown up so far in this micro story. Just her not knowing what's in the box.
Oh.
Here's an obstacle for our protagonist to overcome. This is functionally the only setup and payoff in sight. We anticipate the meaningful reveal of what will be inside this gift when we open it. But the commercial subverts this expectation smartly and sweetly, and I actually mean that. Instead of actually opening the present from West Africa, Sister takes a pause, eyes the present, eyes her brother, then pulls this quirked up sentimental symbolic gesture.
What are you doing?
You're my present this year.
Oh.
Best part of waking up is Folgers in your...
You're left with the strange sense that the parents are interrupting. Upon reflection, the atmosphere has been getting increasingly thick. There's been some lip glancing. I know you said sister, but all we see is two attractive actors, the same age, making yearning faces at each other. Listen, I have a sibling. I've given them presents and hugged them after they spent a long time overseas. I'm telling you, sibling energy has less expectant gazing than this. Sibling reunions are about picking up old patterns where you left off, and 9 levels deep inside jokes and excited screaming. Sibling love looks like co-conspirator laughter, not soft eyes, shy smiles, and intimate whispers. When the sister was much younger, this softness came across like a big brother feeling soft about his innocent tiny baby sister, but in this circumstance, it looks like a beautiful woman cutting daggers into the heart of a military man. The "what are you doing?" has a little bit of "what are we doing?"
What are you doing?
Not here. It feels like a cathartic kiss is appropriate, and they're actively suppressing it.
There you see her. You know what I mean?
Big Lannister energy. Like, we know this is beautiful and pure and true. There is no contradiction, but they wouldn't understand. I'm not the only one to have this reaction to this commercial. I got this particular piece of feedback a lot, much to the surprise of the creators. Oh, that's right. GQ released an oral history of the Folgers Incest ad in 2019 on the 10-year anniversary. Isn't it unbearable the way that years keep churning by? We should all just stop for a year and pretend a year didn't pass. I need at least 2 years to cope with this year. So the GQ article tells us a little bit of background about this advertisement, and it turns out that the inception of the advertisement was so milquetoast that it makes me feel bad for what I've done. The original writer of this little story was a man named Doug Pippin, who based the story on his son, who in real life worked in the Peace Corps overseas and did come home for Christmas. Tragically, Doug Pippin died before Brother and Sister Home for Christmas 2009 aired on television, kind of like Stan Lee died before Endgame. Time waits for know yet. Everything will be alright. Everything will be alright. But whilst these men may be the creators of this commercial, they are by no means the arbiters of its meaning. The meaning belongs to the masses. Who are you in the eyes of history? Do you think you're in charge of that? You're not in charge of that. No one cares what you want your life to be about. You're in charge of how you'll be judged before God, and very little else. The creators of this commercial are going to heaven. We're going to hell. As executive producer Jerry Boyle reports, it was all very, very innocent. Obviously, what's happened since has been a real something that nobody imagined happening. And our client is so wholesome, it was, we thought, emotional. What people read into it, once that took off, was just insane. And now I'm contributing.
I'm doing my part too.
Fun fact, Timothy Simons, best known as Jonah on Veep, was actually one of the cameramen and audition callback guys on this ad. Like a crew person in LA when he was new to LA. Small world, right? Hollywood. Wow, anyone can make it. He gets the GQ article to the point quite nicely. This was a very long time ago, and if you asked me if I would end up being interviewed about this commercial that I worked on 10 years later, I would not have believed you because it was altogether pretty unremarkable. It's not something I have a lot of memories about outside of the fact that ultimately the commercial kind of seems like the brother and sister are gonna have sex. That's why we're talking, right? Yes. Simons contributed to casting our leads, Matthew Allen and Catherine Combs. Matthew Allen went on to have main roles in shows like Castle Rock and 13 Reasons Why.
I must have the wrong house.
And Combs has had various roles throughout the New York theater scene, as well as NBC's New Amsterdam and HBO's The Deuce with Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Season 3, I think, finds her back in a real serious struggle.
All I know about her that she is Bruce Wayne's girlfriend. Huh? There she is!
Where are you going?
Collins.
I must admit, my heart palpitated with this sad shockwave of empathy when I read that Combs declined to be interviewed for the GQ retrospective. You can understand why. It's not very fun to be remembered for something that you don't want to be remembered for. It can be particularly cruel when you have authentic artistic aspirations beyond a meme. Matthew Allen, the male actor here, reports that he used to be kind of irritated and defensive when people would make jokes about the Folgers Incest Christmas coffee commercial because it made him insecure, like something he participated in sincerely, and people were making light of it and kind of reducing him to this thing, and also it's like vulgar and not as you intended it to be received. And this is just me, but I think that the jokes that are made about this random Folgers commercial meme would feel a lot more violating and degrading if I were a woman. The comment sections underneath this advertisement and the many re-uploads and meme edits of it tend to be filled with jokes about her getting railed by the guy over the kitchen counter and stuff like that, and I just don't know that I would find it as funny if I was the actress implicated in the thing. You know, I might not want to come back to GQ to talk about it, and it might put a pit in my stomach if this was something that I resented because it was an internet meme and I was on the, I don't know, receiving end of it, no pun intended. Fuck! This single line of context implies a tragic undercurrent to this article. Now we've got a dead writer and an estranged, unconsenting party. This is getting kind of sad. So, and I'm serious about this, shout out to Catherine Combs for, by all accounts, being a very talented, hardworking actor.
Really?
She pulls an incredible amount of life out of a 45-second performance. Timothy Simons goes out of his way to emphasize that Combs had an incredible energy and was memorably lovable and a strong actor, and the director Ray Dillman also compliments her in more specific ways. She took it seriously, had something special, did really good things with whatever adjustment I asked her to do, and with one-day shoots like this, professional commercial stuff, this is the highest compliment you can give somebody. I just want to put my thumb on the scale here and tip it towards how good of a job this actress did, instead of demeaning her contribution to culture, I guess. Because it's true, not because I'm nice. The problem here is kind of that she did too good of a job. Allegedly, this whole production was completely innocent all the way through until the ad aired, at which point the fire started. It seems the first recorded whistleblower on the sex vibes was a corporate communications manager named Alexa Marinos, who vented her disappointment in the Folgers Christmas commercial remake on her personal blog. Something about this Peter 2.0 isn't sitting right with me. Is it just me, or does Peter want to bang his sister? There are some serious googly eyes being thrown back and forth between the pair, and not in the "oh, I'm so happy to see you" variety. In the "come fuck me" variety. Why is sister grown up in this version? And why is Peter rocking the bedroom eyes, practically licking his lips at the 37-second mark? Creepy. I'm mad they didn't leave well enough alone. Alexa, you're mad about this? Like, now the Folgers Incest Christmas coffee commercial is fully memed and minted in cultural memory. It's remembered in celebratory reverie. It's iconic. It's jokes. So it's crazy to boot up the forum logs and find people actively mad about it in real time. Peep these comments with me. The original is so sweet and innocent. What happened, Folgers? So wrong. What happened, Folgers? I was so excited for Peter Comes Home for Christmas 2.0. You ruined this for me. Bang your sister in a Folgers commercial? Nasty. Yes. 1,000 times yes. That is 100% creeper from both of them. Poor parents interrupting a moment between siblings. You. An operative word that keeps coming up here is creepy, and I think that's interesting. What does creepy really mean? It's levied here with so much moral condemnation and disgust, but what's creepy and disgusting here? Mutual attraction? Hear me out. Like, first of all, the reality of the situation is that the fake siblings don't so much as hug for like 20 milliseconds on screen, and we're all reading into this. So let's just tie all of your outrage to that fact quickly. I also detected the sex vibes. There was no need to be upset. But these terms like nasty, creepy, ew, you're trying to mark this media experience as dirty or perverted, and I don't think that's an accurate descriptor of what we're experiencing. The only voice of reason in this comment section is Lemon X. Who am I to judge if he wants to bang his sister? Truly, and here's the thing. Everyone's complaining about bedroom eyes and creepy and ew, but the tension here isn't that the chemistry between these two is salacious and icky and improper. The problem is that their chemistry reads so romantic and sincere. It's not creepy. It's palpably magnetic. At this point, you might say, CJ, it sounds like you're defending incest, and that's not true. I'm not defending incest. I'm defending incest between these two. We can't help but wonder what the rest of their lives look like in light of this sexual tension forbidden from actualization, which does bring us to the rest of this video. The internet memed this ad. Many made edits to emphasize the eroticism, but some people didn't merely stop with mocking it. Some people took it as inspiration. That's right, Folgers is an entire fanfic genre and archive of our own. Unsurprising, but still wonderful to see the indomitable internet spirit is alive and well. Most of these stories are bad because most things are bad. The vast majority of Folgers fics are extremely horny and extremely incompetently constructed. They tend to fixate pretty intensely on the mystery box. However, the heavy emphasis on sex in this present from far away, I think misses the beating heart of this commercial. You're My Present this year isn't sexual innuendo, it's epic sweeping romance. And the most popular Folgers fic honors this essence in scope and spirit. It's called A Home for All Seasons by orphan_account dedicated to take_liberties, and we're gonna read it together right now. That's the rest of this video. Strap yourselves in, this is a journey. So apparently this commercial has gone viral? Well, however you got here. Welcome. I like your shoelaces. Thanks, I stole them from Joseph Biden. Sarah? Libby looked at her big brother, tall and brilliant and adventurous. And brave. He was such a good person.
Matt,
she said, grabbing his hand in both of hers.
I'm so proud of you.
He held her gaze for a moment, and she wondered if he wanted to say something else. Instead, he smiled at her parents, hiked his pack up onto his shoulder, and nodded. Bye. Right away. Excellent adaptive choices. We're trying to flesh out a 45-second story without breaking its fundamental essence, so I think beginning with the brothers' departure from the country is a perfect idea. We can eschew the single shoot, single location limitations of the visual medium, and instead just show the moment that they're split apart, so you feel the distance between them for the rest of the story. Accordingly, this story is organized into seasonal time skips, like the New Moon Depression montage. Bloom, burn, wane, wilt, bloom, burn, wane, wilt. And most of it takes place in the liminal space of long-distance phone calls and voicemails.
Hi, big brother. So you're usually home by this time, but I'll assume that you're out enjoying that wild Cameroon nightlife. And by that I mean the nightly Cameroon wildlife. Get it? Because you're in Africa. Look at that, actual sibling banter. The brother's name is Matt, not Peter, which admittedly is a betrayal to the source. But on the other hand, we do get glimpses of Matt witnessing children die in West Africa, which I think is a great addition. He wanted to talk to her, badly needed to hear her voice, but after the day he'd just had, he wasn't sure he should talk to anyone. He didn't want to burden Libby with what he was dealing with tonight. Lying down and closing his eyes helped nothing. He only saw the face of the boy on the cot, still and ashen and never to move again. He opened his eyes and stared into the dark, wondering if he would sleep that night. Oh God! I saw an incest trigger warning. I didn't see this trigger warning. Have you seen people die?
Libby. There was a sharpness in his voice she had rarely heard before. I really don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
she said, feeling very small. Bye, Folgers today! Libby and Matt chat about the scourge of HIV, exchanging life updates, bonding over how bad they miss each other, and frequently sharing a fantasy of building a house on a cliff by the coast, tending crops together, ignoring the world, and sticking with each other only, the only ones who truly understand.
Tell me about our house.
She pleaded, wanting to imagine their home, their beach, their sky.
Tell me the story of us.
Again?
The dream of the cottage on the cliff by the coast with the crop starts as sweet as can be, but slowly evolves into covert code for something deeper. Innocent as it appears, this juvenile fantasy quickly becomes a secret symbol of their relationship that can be referenced covertly even in front of their parents, as is demonstrated in Matt's birthday Zoom call.
Are you eating well?
His mom asked.
I hope you're getting a lot of vegetables.
Tons, Matt replied. He watched Libby's face as he spoke. Cameroon is a great climate for growing crops. She smiled softly. Just like that, this is no longer just a fun fantasy. It's also a secret language that signals commitment and exclusivity. Sometimes you develop a habit with someone that you don't realize crosses a romantic line until someone else walks into the room and you realize a seal has been broken. This Zoom call is also notable because it's the moment that we realize Matt will be home for Christmas 2009. Libby's face lit up.
You'll be home for Christmas?
Hopefully, Matt confirmed. The smile that spread across her face would keep him warm for days. The canon event approaches!
An incoming canon event.
Something else sexy about this story is the way that the power dynamic shifts. Like, Matt and Libby take turns needing each other's attention a little more than the other can provide. When Matt initially ships off overseas, Libby anxiously awaits his every call while he's busy onboarding with the Peace Corps and witnessing children die of AIDS. But then, as Matt's new life stabilizes, Libby goes off to university in Baltimore, Maryland, city of ContraPoints and... crabs! Libby thrives in her new academic life, leaving Matt feeling slightly left behind. Matt speared a piece of tomato on his fork. Sounds like things are going well?
Yeah.
Libby hesitated.
I have a date tomorrow night.
Matt coughed, narrowly avoiding inhaling his tomato. A date?
Yeah.
Libby sounded nervous. Or excited, maybe both. Who is he?
His name is Jeremy. He's in Bio 202 with me, and he asked me to a movie this weekend.
Wow. That's... Matt felt his stomach knot up. Libby had never had a boyfriend before. He couldn't say he was thrilled about her dating some guy she had met in her first week of college. That never ended well.
Matt?
Libby definitely sounded nervous now.
Do you think this is a bad idea?
He could imagine her face, her teeth worrying her lower lip, her eyes boring into his. Of course not, he replied with as much conviction as he could muster. I'm sure he's a great guy.
I hope so.
A book slammed shut on her end.
But shit, I've got to get to my class. I'll call you soon.
Love you, Matt said, but she had already hung up. Ugh. Then season switched to winter, and it happens. She was staring out the window blankly, seriously contemplating starting on her economics homework just to have something to occupy her time when the taxi rounded the corner. Libby gasped out loud. Stop, she implored silently as the taxi drove down the street. Stop here, stop here. It stopped outside of their driveway. Libby spun around and raced to the door, ripping it open just as Matt stepped onto their porch. He pulled back, surprised. She drank in his face, a huge, silly grin on her own. Brother Sister Home for Christmas 2009 just dances off the page in this context.
I must have the wrong house,
Matt said, glancing at the house number. He looked back at her with a growing smile. Libby giggled.
Sister?
Sister? She said, as if he'd actually forgotten. Not waiting for him to speak, she threw herself into his arms.
Oh, I missed you so much.
We can canonically confirm that Matt's flight was delayed, so that settles that. Orphan_account just took effort to make every piece of dialogue feel more intentional, with little else than utilizing verbs other than said. He dropped his pack by the stairs and followed her into the kitchen.
They waited up all night for you, you know.
She told him accusingly.
And so did I.
It's a long way from West Africa.
He protested. They just took ChatGPT dialogue and made it human. The only editorial detour is this snide shot at Folgers, which many Folgers-cessed fanfic writers feel the need, understandably, to insert.
Oh, real coffee.
Nope, just Folgers.
Libby apologized, jumping onto the island.
We ran out of the real roast.
This is art, not commerce. We are under no contractual obligation to misrepresent the status of Folgers and the dominance hierarchy of coffee. You know how the story goes from here. Matt, not Peter, got you something from far away, and you're my present this year, the two genders. But when the parents interrupt the siblings' Guillaume moment, one of my favorite moments of the story happens. Libby sat on the counter, the tableau in front of her enough to keep her warm and happy for days. She watched Matt talk to their parents and flushed warm when she saw his fingers reach up to lightly, absent-mindedly, touch the bow in his sweater. Dash! Cut to black. The rest of the holidays speed by with Wikipedia research reports on Cameroon making an appearance. Libby sneaks into Matt's room for real talks about the dead children, and they fall asleep in each other's arms on the last night, unintentionally. Just so much plausible deniability. And in what I consider to be a very real act of artistic reservation, they don't bang over Christmas.
Negative. It didn't go in.
Matt goes back to Cameroon, and the story chugs along on its choo-choo tracks. But by the time of her next season switch to spring, their relationship has clearly progressed. They've ramped up their language with each other. Libby plugged her phone into its charger, cursing its diminishing battery life. Once it powered on, she looked at the clock. 5 p.m. her time meant 11 in the evening for Matt. He could still be up. Hello?
Hi. Sorry I missed our date. My phone died.
Did you hear that? Libby called it a date. Libby and Matt sitting in a tree. Cottagecore fantasy, heal my mind from dead kids. Libby has had a hard day, so she bursts into tears, startling Matt. Matt sounded startled when she burst into tears. Lib, sweetheart, what's wrong? He calls her sweetheart. You two been talking a lot since Christmas, huh? Dates with your sweetheart? Libby, for comfort, asks Matt to regale her of their cottagecore fantasy, and they start to drift off into their literal mind palace hammock underneath the stars. And that's exactly when Libby fucks up and says the quiet part out loud. She imagined pressing her nose into his neck, her lips at the juncture of throat and collarbone. Her heartbeat sped up to triple time, and she suddenly saw the precipice she was on had been on for ages.
Matt.
Yeah?
I think I want to kiss you.
His breath was harsh and ragged when he drew it in. Lib. Her blood froze solid as ice when she realized what she had said.
Oh my god.
She said, sitting up so quickly her head spun. Libby, it's okay.
No, God, no it's not. Matt,
Libby felt sick, dizzy.
I have to go.
She heard him call her name through the thousands of miles between them the instant before she disconnected. Throwing the phone away from her in disgust, Libby retreated to the corner of her bed. Knees to her chest, hands clasped tight over her mouth. She let out a desperate, pained sob. Dash! Cut to black! Oh my god.
Oh wow.
The unconscious, unspoken truth breaks violently into reality. It really kills me that they built in the internal shame into the story. But now this dreamlike, escalating alternative universe that Libby and Matt have been building in cyberspace is encroaching upon their reality, and they can no longer ignore its implications. Despite Matt immediately trying to reassure his sister that this is okay and they can work through this, Libby avoids him, and Matt spends the whole next day at work ruminating on this memory in his mind as if what had happened were a physical embodied event. His hand had been in her hair, her leg tucked over his, and her hand resting over his heart. He could see and feel her in their hammock as clearly as if it were an actual memory rather than an invented figment they shared late at night. He could feel Libby's heartbeat pounding against his ribs in tune with his own pulse, and he could see her lifting her head off his chest, looking at him and saying, I think I want to kiss you. And God help him, he wanted to kiss her back. God help him.
Oh my god!
Finally, the next night, after 24 hours of avoidance, Libby calls him tearfully to beg him to forget what she said.
I'm so sorry, Matt.
It's okay.
No, it's...
She trailed off.
Can we just pretend it didn't happen?
But Matt's reply will shock you. Matt opened his mouth to agree, but found the words lodged in his throat. He could say yes, and they could try to return to normalcy. The only problem was, he didn't want to. No. The sob he heard on Libby's end of the line made him want to die.
Matt, please.
Libby, he took a deep breath, trying to muster up his courage. Libby, it's not just you.
What's not?
She said, confusion in her words. I wanted to kiss you too. Libby sounded very small and incredibly far away.
Matt?
I wanted to kiss you too. The words were easier to say a second time. And a third. I wanted to kiss you. Let's go!
You did?
Libby took a great, shuddering breath. I did. I do. She was silent for a long, cruel moment where he wondered if he'd gone too far, if he'd lost her forever. Then finally, she spoke.
So kiss me.
Can you kiss me more? We're so young.
They immediately resume fantasy role-playing, and exactly what you think is gonna happen happens. She couldn't speak, only made inarticulate noises that were so amazing it hurt. Sex!
That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
The scene concludes with what I consider to be the climax of the story. His head was spinning, but he felt oddly calm at the same time. Peaceful, even.
Matt.
Libby whispered, and then trailed off. He didn't know what to say, how to respond.
What happens now?
Matt looked down the bed, at his flaccid dick and the mess on his hand and the sheets tangled around his knees. I don't know. Dash! Cut to black! Chilling! An actual perfect moment. If the author just stopped the story here, that shit would be unbelievable. It would be like the end of Infinity War. But that's not the end of the story. Orphan_account wants to take this tale elsewhere. Now that brother and sister have made their true feelings explicit, we still have to contend with the growing tension between this fantasy realm and reality. And that's the focus of the rest of the story, as we begin to see in the ominous premonitions that begin to beset our characters.
Is this gonna drive us apart?
No, I promise. We're gonna be fine. Libby bit her lip, reassured but still feeling the slightest chill in the back of her head. Like there was worse and darker and harder out in the mist. Agony in the Garden of Gethsemane moment. Take this cup away from me vibes. Needless to say, now our heroes are horny calling daily as their maladaptive daydream sex universe grows increasingly powerful. It's a pretty bold, surrealist element of the story that all of the intimacy occurs in this shared hallucinatory imaginative space, like shared psychosis or hysterical contagion. They're literally fucking in the fourth dimension. A real mindfuck this story is. Get it? Mindfuck. And after that fateful night when the seal is broken, their fantasizing spirals out of control. Balance goes out the window. At one point, Matt almost tells his coworker an imagined experience as if it was a real one. He found himself on the verge of telling Garrett about his latest hike before remembering that he'd never taken said hike. He'd never left his bed, in fact. He and Libby had walked that trail earlier in the week, but only in their heads. He can't tell them apart anymore. He started to wonder if this is what insanity felt like. Two worlds separated by the flimsy curtain of dawn. At any moment, he knew, someone could look in and see what was going on. The real world wouldn't wait forever. It would intrude soon on the life he was building with Libby. It had to. Matt wondered if he cared. Dash! Cut to black! There's this interesting form break that happens next, where the author abandons third-person narration to just serve this series of unattributed dialogue lines without any editorialization. It's very effective. It's almost like that bit in The Last of Us where they fade down the dialogue so that we, the audience, can't hear what the characters are saying to each other because it's too personal.
You know what I mean?
In this case, they fade out the narrative voice, leaving just the characters speaking to each other on the phone, giving us this feeling that we're intruding on their endlessly expanding fantasy, like not even the narrator is here for this conversation, or the narrator doesn't have to be here. If the narrator stopped putting in the effort to flesh out the structure of the story so we could also exist here, all that'd be left are these phone calls in the void, back and forth, forever and ever, together in eternal shared sibling psychosis. It occurs to me reading this now that this is kind of the climax for the characters, the emotional climax. When you strip literally everything else away, you take the audience away, you take the narrator away, you take all context away, and all that's left is this essence of their relationship enacted through the phone. Let's see where this goes. Season swap to fall. As Libby concludes a light jog in crisp autumn weather, she anticipates Matt arriving home next month, but she's also starting to experience some of these dark premonitions. She never loved fall, never loved the heat slowly slipping away, knowing it wouldn't return for several months. This fall, however, she welcomed with open arms because it would arrive her brother, returning home to America. To her. What's that saying about God and plans? That doesn't sound very good. Her phone was ringing when she got back to her room. She had kicked off one sneaker already and was towing the other one off when she registered the muffled sound.
Hi, Mom.
She answered.
I was just about to hop in the shower. Can I call you back and...
Libby.
She heard a sniffle on the other end.
Mom, are you okay?
Libby, it's...
Oh, no.
Mom?
Libby asked again, desperate to hear more and absolutely terrified at the same time.
Is Dad okay?
There's a small part of her that knows, but will never admit that she was hoping her dad was the one her mom was calling about. No.
Libby, it's your brother. A director from the Peace Corps called. There's been an accident.
No! Matt fucking dies! Peter is not coming home this Christmas 2009. If you're thinking, wait, he's not in the army, he's in the Peace Corps. He couldn't have died in action. You'd be right. Matt biked off a cliff.
He was biking, the woman said, and there was a sudden storm, and he lost control. She said he'd been on a cliff.
Our cliff.
Can you kiss me more? Where's all your...
If you're planning on banging your sister this October, do not bike on cliffs near rainstorms. What? Her mom was talking still. Something about plane tickets and arrangements, funeral arrangements, body arrangements, putting Matt in a box and putting the box in a hole and filling the hole with dirt. Arrangements. Buy Folgers today! Horny time is over. The rest of the story is just wall-to-wall grief. Libby takes a vow of silence throughout the funeral proceedings out of fear that if she allows herself to openly mourn, she might accidentally reveal the intense nature of her relationship with her brother, tarnishing the dignity of his memory in the eyes of others. Which is actually heartbreaking. Libby had said nothing, not in eulogy, not to guests, not even to her parents. She had been silent aside from the most necessary of words since her parents returned from Cameroon a week ago with Matt's body. She was allowed to be devastated as far as everyone else knew. She had lost a beloved brother, her hero and best friend. If she let herself mourn, however, if she let herself talk about Matt to anyone but the deepest recesses of her own psyche, she would lose all control. And who knew what she would confess? What others would be able to infer. She owed it to Matt to keep silent. My Folgers today. But the story is still not over. Matt's gone, physically. But Matt and Libby's relationship didn't exist in physical space. It existed in this dream space between them in their imaginations. So even with one of its moorings lost, the dream surges on. Libby can't stop herself from continuing to speak to Matt in her mind, subconsciously recreating their familiar fantasy rhythms. She half sighed, half sobbed out of relief and pain when she heard his voice. I'm still here, Libby.
Liar.
This continuing to speak to those we have lost after they've departed from this mortal coil is a real grieving experience that sometimes transpires when a loved one passes away, and is also the second major bite that this story takes from New Moon.
You wanted me to be human.
And this dream-speaking dead brother-lover ghost Matt in Libby's mind delivers the line that I think is the main thematic core of this story. She didn't blame him, did she? She couldn't. That wouldn't be fair at all. Nothing's fair about any of it. The real tragedy of the Folgers Coffee Christmas Incest commercial 2009 is as beautiful and pure and real as this chemistry is between these two. The world was never going to approve. Their love might be authentic, but the premise was flawed. There's no happy ending here. What are they gonna do? Sit their parents down and reveal their relationship? What way could this go that goes well for them? At that moment, when the narration faded out and they were all alone together in Phone Universe, Libby and Matt were fantasizing about running away together this fall, abandoning their family and friends and making their cottagecore fantasy a reality. Just the two of them, just the people that understand. But that would mean the end of their lives. That would mean breaking their parents' hearts. That would mean cutting themselves off from the rest of the world. It feels right. It feels more right than anything else. But there's a reason all the intimacy between Libby and Matt had to occur over the phone. Because if it happened in real life, it would be way too messy. It's just some cruel accident of the universe, of who they are, that they have these feelings, and that nothing can be done about it. The moral of Romeo and Juliet is that they die at the end. It's just random and cruel that these two souls in these two particular bodies had to know each other this particular way. As random and cruel as, say, a bike accident. You're really gonna let me say that? To have privately, honestly had each other, mind, body, and soul in phone land, then having the IRL choice to indulge that ripped away from them is kind of the best way this could have possibly turned out. Now, I want to talk about time. Time passes in this story either through dashes or with season transitions. Dashes indicate, of course, a dramatic cut to black, but they also indicate the passing of hours or days, while season transitions indicate the passing of months. But the dashes also have another quality in that they always signal the transition from one character perspective to another. But both the perspective swapping and the changing of the seasons both stop entirely after Matt bikes off a cliff in West Africa. Just like losing a loved one in real life, there's a kind of before and after epoch to contend with. We become disoriented and exist in eternal autumn. The seasons stop changing, or else aren't worth keeping track of anymore. And the dashes keep coming, but without Matt to transition to on the other side of the line, they're ballooning in pregnant, lonely intensity, growing to represent larger and larger spans of time. Progressively, days, then months, then years go by in dashes, but no seasons. Which leads me to believe that the season transitions weren't actually just signaling the passage of time. The seasons were Libby and Matt keeping track of when next they're gonna see each other. It's referenced earlier in the story how furious Libby is at their separation and how resentful she is of the idea that she and Matt will only see each other like once a year. She keeps careful track of their time apart, and the moment that she realizes that he's going to be home for Christmas 2009, she starts counting down to that. The following spring, they share their special secret sex night together, and then it's countdown to October. But then fall comes, and Matt bikes off a cliff, and the seasons stop changing because they cease to have relevance. Matt isn't starting a job. Libby isn't starting school. Peter's not coming home for Christmas, and they are never gonna run away together. Instead, you're just left with these heavy, empty dashes. Every time they come around, they signify more time, like time's starting to move faster or it means less. Structurally, they remind you of Matt's absence because there's no perspective to shift to. We're trapped in Libby's mind with her. The grief and loneliness really get under your skin. This life went on, bookmarked on either side by a dash, Brutal. The thing that killed your spirit left your body intact. Libby goes numb. She abandons her social life. Her relationship with her parents is shattered. She can't talk to them about this. They wouldn't understand. The only person who she could talk to is fucking gone. So instead, she just spends all of her time maladaptive daydream talking to the dead Matt in her head. At rock bottom, she refuses to come home for Thanksgiving, eating a peanut butter sandwich alone in her bed, and she contemplates unalive aviation.
Did it hurt?
Of course, but it was quick.
Why weren't you more careful?
He didn't respond. She walked to the window and stared out at the quad, 7 stories below.
Did it hurt?
She asked again.
I don't wanna live no more.
Libby, no! It's okay. She goes to therapy and gets help. Thank God. Poor girl. The following Monday, she walked into the student health center and made an appointment with the counselor. To say things got easier would be a lie.
Another day, another struggle.
Life goes on. Libby graduates. She goes on dates. She tries to stop talking to the dead Matt in her head. Eventually, she even starts to forget what his voice sounds like, a realization that leaves her crying on the bathroom floor. By Folgers today. She ends up joining the Peace Corps also, not going to West Africa, but somewhere else to contribute to a village in some capacity, leaving behind the unfulfilled fantasy of the cottage by the coast on the cliff with her dead brother's mangled remains strewn out across the rocks at the bottom. The Matt in her head remained silent, as he had for years now. Nodding slightly, Libby backed out of the water, picked up her shoes, and started back to her new village. And that's the ending. For real. That's it. Do you like where we ended up? Don't cry because it happened. Cry because you're not the same person anymore. I cry on the train, I cry on the floor, I can't eat, can't sleep, and the things that used to bring me joy no longer do. At times like this, I always tell myself, things are bad, but they've been this bad before, and they will be again. And if you think about it, most of your life is like this. Bye, Folgers today. I hope you're happy.
I think I'm an addict.
Hi. I was just watching this back right before uploading it, and I thought this was very funny to end it like this, but now I'm realizing it might have been a little irresponsible, actually. So, here's me trying to cheer you up a little. Alternative ending. You might think to yourself, what a good short story. They should make it a movie. Well, they did. It's called Her, directed by Spike Jonze, released in 2013. Think about it. You're having an unlikely, rare, intimate relationship, kind of where it shouldn't be. It's taboo, but it's beautiful and pure. And then evolves through imagination phone land, involving physicality somehow manifesting.
Everything else just disappeared.
Eventually ending in tragic, necessary, transcendent loss.
I think I'm an addict, want the world and I'ma have it. I'm so fucking dramatic, got all my bones up in the attic and I dance them all around like a marionette.
If you like that and you want to see more, don't do anything. You don't gotta do anything. I have enough patrons. Just need to stay like this forever. I'm good. And I'm working on the big video. I didn't spend a year on the Folgers commercial. There was another project. There was multiple big projects. And I'm still working on them. And even if I lost all my patrons, I would still finish it. So whatever you do because you want to see more isn't really going to change whether or not you see more. So just don't do anything. If you hated it, if you hated this, I'm still gonna finish the big video. So it really doesn't matter what you do. It's not gonna change anything. Don't donate to Patreon. All of you unsubscribe if you want. Or you could. It makes no difference. I'm fine, and I'm just gonna keep doing it. So just do whatever there is to do.